this policy, this contractor's always policy. We can call it a construction policy because most of the risk under the CAR policy deals with civil engineering works. Okay. Now, as what Alex mentioned, I'm a director in Charles Taylor. I'm doing regional claims as well, so mostly in engineering claims. Okay. Yeah, and that's a bit of my background. Okay. Now, before we start, I think I'll just show you guys some common engineering failures, construction engineering failures, so that you guys are familiar. So I'll run through examples of CAR losses, and then we will go to the dry part where we so-called explore the policy wordings. And I will also go through some common clauses and some clauses which your claims department would like me to highlight to you guys in the event of claims. And I've taken out the case study because it's a bit too long, and the claim handling procedure as well. So we'll stick to the general, very introductory session on losses and policy wordings. Okay, now, so before we start, I'll show you guys some general examples of CAR losses that we commonly see in Malaysia. So this is a windstorm damage. If you see the collapsed structure, it's actually an uncompleted roof structure. So it's an under construction roof which collapsed due to windstorm. So as you guys know, the weather nowadays in Malaysia is really, we can call wild or crazy. So it's unpredictable. Well, it's predictable in the sense we know it's going to come, but unpredictable in the sense that we don't know how massive or how frequent it will hit us. So proper precautionary measures need to be taken in. And as a consultant and a contractor, all these design considerations have to be taken into consideration. Yeah, a lot of time the consultant or the contractors, they use back the standard design or the design which is from 20 years ago, which might not fit the current weather condition. So that's when things goes bad, right? Now, for a proper windstorm, this is a theory behind a windstorm damage. So if you have a closed structure, what we call a completed structure, so the wind will be blocked to enter the building. So it will go past the building. This is the aerodynamics of the wind, how it flows. However, you can see the difference. If you have an open structure where the wind can go in, it's like uncompleted buildings where you are still building the structure, but some contractor they build the roof first, okay? Or you have a shed or a car park structure where the bottom is empty, just few columns, and then with a roof, then the wind will easily go in and create an uplift force. So that's where windstorm damage can happen. Next, we move on to the more commonly seen soil movement. Okay, this is what we call third-party claim, because usually the affected parties, the claimants, are actually the party outside the construction site. So their properties are usually affected by the soil movement inside the site, within the site. Okay, so the soil movement can be massive. It can cause a sinkhole, it can cause subsidence, or it can just create some nuisance vibration, small cracks, okay, which I think is quite common. Most of you might have some experience with this. But from these photographs, you can see inside the construction site, the row of wall, we call this sheet pile wall, okay? It's pieces of sheet pile, vertical sheet piles driven into the ground to form a wall. So if you can see, the alignment is also out already. So the soil movement is created because there's movement to the wall, right? Which allow the soil to move, and that created movement on the third-party side. Okay, if you can see in more detail in this photograph, you see the sheet pile walls actually have rows of reinforcement. Okay, so it means that the consultant or the contractor probably have experienced some movement earlier, and they already try to fix this wall. Unfortunately, with this reinforcement being built into the wall, it still moves. So yeah, there's your claim. Okay, so this is the theory part. I don't know how many of you can understand this. So basically, we are saying either it's a sheet pile wall or a retaining wall, as long as the retained soil side, the forces is bigger than the bottom supporting side, then it will create a rotating effect, causing the wall to fail, the wall to move. Okay. Now, this is an example of a reinforced earth wall failure. It's a massive, massive loss, this one. So you can see, there are a lot of elements in this loss. There's the contractor building the reinforced earth wall. There are two huge water pipes at the bottom. There's a river or monsoon drain, most likely belonging to the authority. And then on the right, you can see there's a apartment structure. So in this claim itself, there are so many parties involved. Okay, if you are if you are the agent for the apartment, then you'll be dealing with probably debris which was washed over from the collapsed wall. Then you will have maybe small flood or a lot of cleaning work to do. So you'll be claiming against the contractor. Okay, but if you are the agent for the contractor, your contractor actually suffered a collapsed wall. Okay, this collapsed wall would have caused damage to the third-party apartment, as well as the bottom, the owner of the twin pipe, the water pipe. So in this instance, it's Shabas. Okay, so there are a lot of things inside this claim. The causation, the root cause of it, we found it to be a design failure, a defective design of the wall. Okay, so the wall was not properly designed, so it failed during construction. But when they start to remove the debris, they found out the pipe has burst as well. So the contractor initially tried to blame the water pipe, to say, oh, there was already a leakage earlier, and then which caused their pipe to fail, their wall to fail. Okay. For the apartment side, there's no argument, right? They caused damage to the third-party cars, to the apartment, so they have to bear with the cost of the cleaning and everything. Okay, so the argument was between the wall and the Shabas pipe. All right, so this one required a lot of investigation. It's still the same claim. If you can see, there's another Shabas pipe, an older one, right, which is exactly underneath the highway construction, the wall construction. So if you can see, this pipe has actually deformed. It's not round anymore. It's already been compressed and become oval. Okay, so there's no doubt there was a leakage, there was a burst from the pipe, which washed out the retained soil from the retaining wall and ultimately caused the wall to fail, right? But the investigation showed that it is the retaining wall construction with all the retained soil, which is like maybe 5 meters of retained soil, pressing on the existing water pipe, which caused the pipe to burst. So ultimately, it goes back to the wall, which is the culprit. Okay. So for this type of claims, really you require very technical investigation and technical adjuster as well. Now, this is another technical claim. It's a spun piles which failed. If you can see the spun pile, the one with the guy standing there, it's deformed. It's like the bottom part, we call it pregnant. The pile is pregnant because it has been overdriven, or maybe it has, when it was driven to the ground, it hit some hard rock material, and then it couldn't go down some more, but the person on top still don't know. They still try to drive in, and this will cause this type of failure. And this is another type of failure, right? During pile driving, the pile can be slanted, it can break. So this deal with different risk. This is a more common flood damage. So for CAR policy, annotation. What is that? Okay. Oh, okay. Right. So I think flood damage is a very common risk we see nowadays. So for CAR policy, we are mostly dealing with flood damage to construction plants as well as contract works. So the contract works can be washed away. The construction plant, it could be if you don't move the plant fast enough, it could be inundated, inside the construction site, right? You see heavy machineries, you see cranes, excavators, all these submerged. Then sometimes we talk about overflowing of water channel, overflowing of river, overflowing of drain, monsoon drain. So in some areas in where you have a construction site, usually they haven't completed the drain, so they'll have temporary drainage, which is usually only an earth berm. All right, they'll put a heap of soil there just to prevent water from going in. So this kind of structure usually is not properly designed. It's just based on their experience. And when there's a more extraordinary rainfall or whatever, it'll be overtopped lah. Okay. Then this photo shows a flood damage, but it's actually a river. Okay, so the flood damage was damage to a structure within the river. Okay, so it sounds quite weird, right? River can sustain flood damage. So in fact, this river, the government was trying to build a small weir or small dam to control the water level upstream. So during construction, this was probably, this is in December. So during the rainy season in East Coast of Malaysia. So the monsoon rain brought down very heavy volume of water. So the water from upstream gushed down to this downstream, and along with the water, it brought a lot of debris, like big tree trunks, branches, boulders. All these can cause impact damage and a lot of different type of damage to the structure, especially under construction structure, which is still not a complete structure. So it's more exposed to all these kind of risks. So that's why you can even have a flood damage to a river, structure in a river. So yeah, so when you understand it, it's quite interesting how these things can happen. But it did happen. So it's not that, it's uncommon. Now, then you will have deliberate fire by arsonists in construction site. So usually when this happen, you can find where probably the contractor has not paid the subcontractors in time, or maybe the workers. So there are a lot of disgruntled parties who will do all these things. Or maybe it could be only one disgruntled worker, who has disciplinary issue, who has just been laid off, and they can do these kind of things. So proper housekeeping is very, very important. And it is one thing I think as an agent, this is a point you can stress to the contractor, especially when those contractors are not those big time, big name contractors. So those big ones, we are not so worried because they have their SOP, they have their compliance to follow. Is the smaller ones, which sometimes we call them the cowboy contractor. So anything goes. So if you have a customer like that, I mean, it is a good practice, or even we can say it's a duty just to tell them, to have proper housekeeping in case anything happen, then it will be easier for everyone. Now, for this site, it's very well maintained. It has very good housekeeping. So all the cable drums are placed properly, secured, and the site is clean. However, there is still fire to the cable drums. So this is a very interesting case where during our investigation, we found pieces of broken glass from glass bottle. Then when we investigate further, we actually managed to locate a few beer bottles, right, alcohol, on site, which is very close to this. So apparently some workers, after working hours, they just stay back there and then just chill and relax, have a few drinks and smoke. And unfortunately, the cigarette butt which they threw to the ground, it was during very dry season, very hot, so it caused a fire. Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but this kind of thing can happen. Now, Then this is an example of a more major construction fire at a construction site. So in a construction site, even though it's under construction building, it looks empty. It looks like only concrete structure, which is not so easily combustible. But there are still a lot of construction materials which can cause fire, even with a small spark or small ignition point like cigarette butts or whatever. Because in a construction site, you have those safety nets, you have timber structure, the timber plywood, formworks, all sort of things are very combustible. And in a lot of sites, you will have those flammable media. Hold on, I just answer a quick question. Okay. So those flammable media can be petrol, can be gas, all these kind of things. So all these have to be kept at a different location, right? So this construction fire can be massive. Once it caught fire, it will be very hard to put out, right? Then this is an example of a collapsed tower crane, collapsed boom. These kind of claims, they were quite rampant probably like 7, 8 years or 10 years ago, where the China market just opened up with a lot of Chinese manufacturer manufacturing tower cranes, which were like 3 times the cost of the original or previous cranes from US, from UK, from Europe, So the Chinese manufacturer can actually make them with half the price or maybe 1/3 the price. So about 10 years ago, there were a huge influx of Chinese cranes, tower cranes, which entered the country. But unfortunately, during that time, whether it's their quality issue or their QA issue, there were a lot of failures. And our JKKP, our safety department actually put a stop to this and banned all these Chinese cranes from entering the country for a few years. So until recently, I suppose with the growth of technology, Chinese cranes are already one of the more reliable ones. Then we start to see all these Chinese cranes coming back in, and we don't see so many claims. I've not seen any yet recently, so it's a good sign. They are back with better technology, better quality. So still with lower cost, so it's good for the contractors, right? Then we have, this is quite common for collapsed formwork. Okay, so you have scaffoldings, you have timber formworks before you cast the concrete. Yeah, so usually this happens when contractor cast concrete, when there's loading, and then the formwork start to fail, the scaffolding start to fail. So a lot of this happen because the contractor actually reuse all these things. We call construction plant and equipment, but it's categorized as construction plant because these are the construction tools the contractors usually reuse from one project to another. So at the end of lifespan, these materials will be more brittle, more fragile. So if not properly maintained or not properly supervised, all these losses can happen, all these accidents. So this is an example of a very sturdy, very good scaffoldings. This is heavy duty scaffoldings and also heavy duty formwork on top. Okay, so usually unfortunately, we only see this for mega projects or maybe very high profile, high rise or high profile projects where all these costs are already factored in. But for common property, construction, housing, or if it's just a normal high-rise condo, sometimes the contractor would not spend so much on these kind of things because these are all temporary works. So you will see a lot of like rusted parts, rusted components, which is very prone to all those collapse and failures. So these are another aspect where if you're an agent, if you visit the site, if you notice anything, you can raise this to the contractor, raise your concern. so that they have something in mind at least. Okay, so when we talk about wall failure, retaining wall, there are many types of retaining wall, big or small. Okay, so this massive retaining wall is a soil nail wall. If you can see the wall comparison with the compared to the long arm excavator at the bottom, you will see how massive the wall is. Okay, you see the excavator on the right, middle right of this photo is so small, the long arm excavator. So this wall is huge, it's 3-tier, right? And you can see all those like rectangle boxes there, like grid boxes. So actually, if you are familiar with construction, a soil nail wall is those smooth structure where they spray some materials onto the wall and then they put soil nail in like this, holding the retained soil at the back, the slope, so you can have a very steep structure. But the grid boxes are similar to the ship pile example I told you guys. So it's actually already a repair, a reinforcement to the soil nail wall. So from this photo, when we went to site, even on site, it is very, very obvious to us there were previous problems with the soil nail wall. So the consultant or the contractor has taken initiative to repair it before, put in reinforcement. Unfortunately, due to the steepness of this soil nail wall, the reinforcement put in was too much in this case, too adequate, too much. And the weight of the reinforcements was too big for the soil nail wall to hold, thus causing this slippage failure. Okay, you don't see this kind of wall, massive wall, often in developed area, Klang Valley. So this case is actually, I can't remember where it is, Cameron Highlands or Genting, near Genting, right? Where you still have ample land, for this kind of structure. Okay, now this is another example of engineered slope failure. I think this is in Bukit Tinggi. Yeah, so it looks like a natural landslide, but in fact it's not. The bottom part is engineered. So engineered slope means work has been done on the slope. Okay, whether it's a retaining wall, whether they have cut the slope. So some sort of work has been done, right, to stabilize it or to make it in the shape it is today. And if it's not done properly, you can have failures. So usually when we see this kind of failures, usually cannot run. It's either design or workmanship. It's very unlikely that the weather, usually the contractor and consultant will blame the weather, but if you investigate further, usually those are not the culprits. The culprits are usually the design and workmanship. This is another example of a wall failure. You can see that the concrete has fallen, but the rebars are exposed, and the rebars are very clean, right? So meaning that the concrete and the rebars are not gelled together. So it indicates something wrong with the construction. So usually this is a workmanship issue, but it could be design as well. Okay, and I don't know how many of you have received calls from your contractor before to say their site has collapsed. Their soil movement, there's landslide at the site. But when you go to the site, you don't see any landslide. These are the things you see: tension cracks on the ground subsided, right? So yeah, the other side, the other view, you can see the soil move. So the contractor usually will tell you, "Wow, there's a landslide at their site," So they try to claim. But as an adjuster, usually we don't only look at things from one angle. So if we go outside, you will discover that, hey, this site is actually next to a river. When there's river, there's water. When there's water, that means the soil there is soft. Okay, so these things is bound to happen if you don't have a proper foundation for your retaining wall. So true enough, this is what happened. The retaining wall, perimeter retaining wall wasn't designed adequately. Okay, this is another wall failure. This retaining wall is another type of retaining wall. This is a we call a creep wall. So, but again, there are similarities with the previous example, right? The similarity is that it's immediately next to a pond, right? Just now was a river. So when there's water there, obviously the land won't be hard, there'll be a lot of soft spot, soft soil. So in both of these cases, the wall design were using standard wall design. That means on hard ground, right? The designer probably never go to the site, they didn't take into consideration their water, and then the water level is very high over there. Okay, so you can have all sorts of retaining wall failures, even though you'll be advised that this wall were properly designed, they were designed by certified consultants, big time consultants, big names, but it still can happen. Okay, right. Then a more specific, more specialized claim in sinkhole. You don't see it every day, only when you have big basement work, underground works. Okay, so this one is during the MRT, right? Okay, so when there's a sinkhole underneath, you can see subsidence on top, because there's a void in the soil. So without the support, the soil on top will come down. If there's any structure on top, it will come down together. Okay, this is I think quite a famous loss in Bukit Bintang. During the MRT construction, it created a big hoo-ha because it's right in front of pavilion, right? Now, how this happened was there was a tunnel boring machine going right underneath that area. Okay, so the tunnel boring machine goes very slow. It will drill the ground and then create a tunnel for the MRT tunnel construction. So for this TBM, tunnel boring machine, it will stop every week for maintenance work, I would say. But the normal maintenance work probably take half a day, right? So that they change oil, change this, change that. But in this case, the stoppage was delayed, was prolonged. So this tunnel boring machine was stopped there for a few days. Okay, so when you have a tunnel, uncompleted tunnel, and the boring machine stopped there with the bitumen running, bitumen is just a temporary material to hold the tunnel together before the concrete lining goes in. So when your machine has drilled a hole, but they have not put in the concrete, and they stop for a while, for longer than expected, the soil being held by the bitumen start to collapse. So when it collapses, it will create sinkhole. Okay, so this is what happened at this area. Then this is another high profile loss. It's the collapsed pedestrian bridge at Eco City, KL Eco City, next to Mid Valley. So if you see this under construction pedestrian bridge, you would thought it collapsed from the top structure, right, from above. But in actual fact, the top of this metal frame you are looking at is actually the bottom of the pedestrian bridge. So the pedestrian bridge didn't only collapse, it actually flipped over, it flipped. So now the bottom is at the top and the top is actually at the bottom. So unfortunately for this case, there was a casualty. There was a worker who, until today, we couldn't find the body. So it's a sad thing. But for this case, there are also a lot of parties involved. There's subcon, main con, there's bearing there's subcontractor, there's consultant involved, the design, there's the bearing supplier. So there are a lot of parties involved. For this case, I think the entire adjusting industry all the competitors are there representing different insurers working on this. Okay. This is another example of movement. From the photograph, everything looks very nice. It's aligned, it's straight, you don't expect there's any loss here. But in fact, the big piece of concrete on the left bottom, this pier actually moved about 1 foot to the right. So supposedly it's supposed to be aligned with the wall behind it. Okay, so it has moved. So for this to happen, this big piece of abutment, for this big piece of abutment to be able to move 1 foot, it indicates that the piles at the bottom have probably broken. Okay, so you will see this kind of movement, severe movement, in areas like plank, bunting, where they have very deep layer of marine soil, marine clay, okay, which is very soft. So you will require a different type of design when you have this kind of soil, condition. So all these things can happen, right? You see how big this abutment is actually, right? The whole thing moves. Then we move on to some more daily common claims we see, right? This is underground cables. Usually when our contractor is doing work, accidentally they will damage this existing underground works. It can be water pipe, it can be telecom cables, fiber optic cables, time.com. You can have TMB cables, gas pipes. Yeah, so all this can happen, even though precaution has been taken. Okay, now, so these are the common examples we sort of see daily, right? So now we move on to the dry part, the policy. I hope everyone is still awake. It's only half an hour into the talk. Okay, so yeah, let's quickly run through a CR policy. So the policy is structured in a way that at the first page, on the first page, you will have the operative clause. It's usually one sentence or one small paragraph, followed by general exclusions of the policy, what they don't cover in general, right? Then they'll have a small one paragraph telling you the period of cover, once it's handover, it's not covered, those kind of things. Usually nobody pay attention to it except adjusters and the claims people. So I encourage everyone to go back and look at your policy jacket and not only look at the schedule, right? Because schedule is only a summary or some customized coverage you want to put in. The actual coverage itself is the wordings is in the policy jacket. So please get a hold of a policy jacket, read through it, and make sure your clients have a copy so that they don't push the blame to you if anything happens. Right? A lot of times, I know a lot of times even broker, sometimes they only give the schedule to their clients, but it's a good practice to give the entire set, schedule plus jacket, and then perhaps you can run through the jacket to show the coverage with them. Okay, now, so for CR policy, you have two sections. Section 1 for material damage and Section 2 for third-party liability. Okay, we will cover these two later. Then the policy at the end, it will tell you how the loss should be settled, the loss settlement, basis of loss settlement, and also a long list of general conditions, things you need to comply with, right? And only then it will be followed by the endorsements. Okay, so in general, this is how a policy is structured. Okay, now for standard CAR cover, like I said, there are Section 1 and 2. So Section 1 relates to everything relating to the contract works. So contract works could be permanent and also temporary works. Permanent means when completion, it is the permanent structure you see. So temporary works are those works you require to construct in order to facilitate your work to complete the permanent work. Okay, so both are covered under the policy as long as the sum insured is sufficient to cover all these project costs. Okay, now, so for contract works, you have your construction period, and which is the main thing of CAR cover. Okay, and also a testing and commissioning period. If let's say you are building condo or building a factory, you will have your machineries. So those machineries will have all this testing commissioning period. Okay, it will be covered under Section 1. For Section 2 is a liability policy, right? It covers the third-party claims arising in connection with buildings or your civil engineering project declared under the policy. Okay, so it covers the property damage and also bodily injury. All right, So now we go into section 1, the contract works. Okay, so the insured parties, who can be insured under the policy? So in general, it is for any party who have immediate material interest in the project, right? So for example, under a common construction contract, you have the owner, the principal, right? Because they want to have certainty that in the event there's severe damage to the works, the contractor still have the financial power to continue and finish the project. So they want the certainty. So that's why they purchase this CI insurance. And sometimes the work involve expansion or refurbishing the existing structure. So there will be existing property owned by the principal, which is at stake, which can be affected. So the principal will want all this to be covered. Okay. Now, contractor and subcontractor, obviously, the name of this policy is contractors all risk. It means any risk concerning any risk that the contractor has to bear during this construction period. Okay, so obviously they will be the main party holding this policy. Even though we know nowadays in a lot of projects, the principal will try to dictate and purchase the policy for the project, but practically CR policy belongs to the contractor. Okay, now in a lot of projects, because the contract is worded differently, some are design and build, some conventional. So for the design and build, the engineer, the consultant, the architect will be parked under the contractor as well. So in this instance, they will want to have cover also, right? So they want to make sure all the damage caused in the event of their faulty design, it will be covered. Okay, so all these parties will have an interest in the policy. It's just that whether they pay sufficient premium to cover these parties, right? So just now we talk about insured parties, now we talk about insured property. Okay, so insured property, like I said, contract works. Contract works is the permanent work, the structure designed by the architect and the consultant for the contractor to construct. Okay, and then you have temporary works, and on the bottom left, contractors plant and equipment. So plant and equipment can also be an insured property. Okay, but you see in red, I put provided value included in sum insured, because in a lot of I would say not a lot, in most of the contract, the value of this plant and equipment will not be included under the contract, because usually these are rented equipments or equipment owned by the contractor, which they will use from project to project. So it's actually is the value of this plant and equipment. They are not part of the project sum insured. Okay, so the project sum insured, you will most likely cater for either the usage cost or the rental cost. So if anything happened to this plant and equipment, let's say a crane, a mobile crane or excavator, right? If something damaged it, so usually the value of that excavator will not be inside the sum insured. Okay, so imagine if you have a big project and you insure all the value of this plant equipment inside as part of the sum insured or part of the contract. At the first place, the contractor wouldn't have won the tender, because if you include all those, like if you include the full price of the scaffoldings, full price of the formwork, I don't think any contractor will win the bid. So usually they only have a preliminaries which cover the rental cost and also the usage. Okay, so another reason is that all these plant and equipment, usually they'll have their own specific equipment policy. Okay, so those are the more specific policies. Okay, now temporary works is something a lot of people thought it's not covered, but in actual fact it is covered, right? And I would say most failures at a contract site for CAR policy happens at these temporary works, So because a lot of contractors, they don't pay so much attention to temporary works because they think it's temporary, I just put it there for 2-3 days or maybe 1 week for me to facilitate this permanent work construction. After that, I will remove already. So they don't really pay attention to the design. They just put it, in their own way, right? But in fact, equal degree of attention is required in respect of the design, the construction, the quality, and also the supervision of temporary works, right? On the right, you can see the ship pile wall forming a coffer dam for river diversion, right? So this, even though this looks massive, is also only a temporary works because ultimately they are building, I can't remember, they are building some structure there. So ultimately, after they complete, they will divert back the river, So it's a temporary work. Now, so it can be coffer dams, formwork, scaffoldings, or diversion of waterways, right? So this is a very important feature which I urge all agents or all stakeholders to pay attention to, the temporary works. It is always where the failure happened, okay? Now, just now we talk about construction plant and equipment. So the definition of plant and equipment means it's reusable on another project, right? So when it's reusable, it's not specific to this project, right? So usually the value of this plant equipment won't be included, okay? Now, so this can be employees' personal tools and effect. It can be hired plants, rented, cranes, excavators, scaffoldings as well, right? So scaffoldings and ship piles, we call it plant. Equipment will be the excavators, bulldozers, right? And then it can also be temporary buildings, like site offices, those container site offices, those worker quarters, right? Those are what we call construction plant, okay? These items can be covered, but usually in, I would say, 98-9% of the policy, it won't be covered, right? Because most of the contractor won't pay the premium to have all this covered. They will push all this responsibility back to the subcon, to the suppliers, okay? Now we go through the general condition of a CAR policy, okay? The relevant conditions, the ones that stick out is, we go from the right first, material change of risk. If there's a change of design, method of construction, so it is better for your client to inform you so that you can inform the HQ, because the risk might be different from a concrete structure, concrete foundation to a timber pile. The risk is very different, okay? From a wooden, well, maybe from a metal frame structure to a concrete frame, the risk is different. So it is very important, if there's any major change, even small change, I will urge you to speak to your underwriters, see what's the impact, because you might not know how big the impact is, right? So gather all the information. Perhaps it is a good practice to not to say visit your clients, but communicate with them frequently, so that if there's any change, material change of risk, you are aware and you can inform the underwriter accordingly, so that you won't be penalized when things happen, okay? Now, another important condition is immediate notification. So under the policy, the standard is 14 days. In some policies, you can increase it to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? So anything happen with or without these additional days, it's good that before the project commence, you have a short briefing or training session with the insured, with your insured, to let them know if anything happens, just notify first. Or if anything happens, ask their workers or their construction managers or whoever, safety officers, to immediately take photographs and use whatever means to inform you, okay? Whether it's WhatsApp, phone call, so that you can already inform your claims department underwriters for them to get prepared, so that you don't give them a heart attack. This is what we say, okay? Now, if you breach these 14 days, even though Bank Negara's ruling is an adjuster or an insurance company cannot simply reject a claim due to a breach of notification period. That means late notification. But in actual fact, we can impose a lot of conditions or a lot of restrictions to your claim if there's late notification. We can say there's not enough evidence is not complete, adjuster were not given the opportunity to inspect at the first place, and things like that. And all this will jeopardize your claim. When it jeopardizes your claim, it will jeopardize your relationship with your clients. So it's very important that at the start of a risk, you do things correctly. The SOP, you lay it down, you set all this with the insured. Okay. Now we move to reasonable precaution. Reasonable precaution is another sensitive issue with the contractor, right? This is required by the policy, right? That contractor need to take reasonable precaution when executing their work. Okay. So, but a lot of times when the contractor want to move things fast, they want to save money, save time, usually they will have shortcut ways to do things, right? So these are things, when things happen, adjusters will look at. So as a competent contractor or consultant, it's their duty to take reasonable precaution. So we would expect some sort of precautionary measures being taken. Then we will look at the claim. If the contractor work without any precautionary measure, we can always say, it's a foreseeable risk. And when you see the word foreseeable, it's no good lah. That means the claim won't be paid. Okay, so these are the things. I mean, there are so many conditions under the policy, but you can highlight a few to the contractor, to your insured, so that they are aware lah. Right? So I mean, it's a very good practice to do so. Okay. Now, this is the gist of the coverage, the insured risk, right? The wording says unforeseen and sudden physical loss or damage occurring during the course of construction. So the word must be unforeseen and sudden, and there must be physical loss or physical damage. All right? Physical damage means if there's a construction defect, it is not a damage. I can't remember whether later I have this slide. There's a big difference between defect and damage. So this is what you need to tell the contractor. Defect means they didn't construct properly lah. It's their problem lah, right? Physical damage means their work is actually damaged by something. Okay, and that something must be unforeseen and it must be sudden. If it's a gradual damage, like gradual subsidence, because they don't do certain thing, gradual subsidence, slowly happen, it will not be covered under the policy. This policy specifically says the damage must be sudden and unforeseen. Okay? Now, from what reason? It can be from whatever cause not specifically excluded. So as you know, the contractor all risk policy is an all risk policy. So technically speaking, it covers everything, all risk. But then there will be a long list of exclusions, which will exclude things the underwriters don't want to cover. Okay, so this is the wording: unforeseen and sudden physical loss or damage from whatever cause not specifically excluded. Right. So what is covered actually? The usual: storm, flood, theft, fire, lightning, blah blah blah. Landslide. Now, and acts of nature. So I think a lot of people they have a confusion, because when they say, oh, this act of nature, this act of God is not covered, it's natural disaster. Actually, it's covered, right? It's covered under the policy. So please read the policy properly, right? The left part, lack of skill, that square, I hope you guys can pay more attention to this, because these areas are usually what the contractor assume these are not covered, right? Lack of skill of their worker, carelessness of their worker, malicious damage, incorrect supervision. All these are, we can say, contractor's fault. Okay, their worker's fault. So most of the contractor, if they don't have any claim experience, they will think that, hey, this is my worker's responsibility, my worker's carelessness. So they will think, if they say this to the adjuster, or if they say this to you, the claims will be thrown out. because they will think that, most of them will think that this kind of loss, this kind of perils are not covered, but it's not true. Okay, that's why we must educate them. This policy is specifically designed to cover all this, the risk, the lack of skill of the worker, because you cannot have not all the workers are the skill level is the same, right? So you have some sort of negligence, some sort of carelessness in the work. So the intention of the policy is to cover this. So this is what we have to educate them. And why is it important to educate them? Because if they think this type of losses are not covered, when the adjuster go to site, they might create stories, made up stories to tell the adjusters. And it is not good, because usually the story won't hold water, like what we say. The story will not be convincing enough, because it's a story made up by them. Okay, so it is always the best to ask them to be honest and let the adjuster have all the information, all the real information, authentic information, so that adjuster can sit down with the insured, with your agent, with you guys, and to work out what is covered, what is not. It's very transparent. So no point hiding information from us. Okay, we will know, right? So, but the best thing is, before it happened, you guys have to tell them, okay, these are covered, these are not covered. Okay, now we go to the exclusion. So the general exclusions are quite standard. Nuclear risk, we don't have it here. War risk, fortunately, we don't have. But CCRS, civil commotion, riot strikes, this could happen. Okay, it's not covered. Liquidated damages, penalties, these are not covered. So especially for Section 2, when you hit the authorities' cables, TMB or whatever, they will have, other than their material repair costs, they will have a lot of all these penalties, right? These are not covered under the policy, because it's what we call consequential loss. It's indirect financial losses. Usually, the authority themselves also cannot prove one. So these are things this policy don't cover. This policy is not designed to cover this. Okay, this policy is designed to cover direct risk from the construction. Okay, now the third box, willful act or negligence. This is very important, because just now in the previous slide I said, hey, lack of skill, carelessness, these are covered. So this actually can be categorized as negligence. Now, just now Vin said negligence covered. Well, now the next slide said negligence not covered. Now the difference is the word willful. Willful act or willful negligence. Willful means if you already know by doing this will happen, and you still do it, so it's intentional, then it's not covered under the policy. Okay, so usually adjusters don't like to go to this. If there's a loss, we will try not to go to this, right? Because it's very argumentative, it's very subjective. If you keep arguing on this, usually insurers will take the legal way. You'll go and seek legal advice, or it can fight until the court, right? So it's for the court to determine. So willful act or negligence is something, it's not fun going there. It's a sensitive issue. So be sure to advise your client, on this. If they know something is going to happen, if they don't do certain things, then it's not covered under the policy, right? Because it's already their decision to take such risk, right? They already assume the risk, so it's not covered under the policy. So the word willful is very critical. Willful act or willful negligence is different from normal negligence. Yeah, normal negligence is accident. Okay. Now, then these are the special exclusions, right? You have defective design, which is everyone's favorite subject. I will talk about this later. And then defective material or bad workmanship. Okay. For example, it's failure of contractor to exercise control. Okay. Consequential loss, like I said just now, all these penalty losses, lack of performance, loss of contract, opportunity cost, these are not covered. Mechanical or electrical breakdown of the machines, these are not covered, because like I said, for those special equipment, usually they'll have their very specific machinery cover. Okay, so this type of risk is not covered under the CAR policy. Everyone still okay? Still can follow? Okay, only 1 hour in. Now, defective design, right? Everyone is interested in defective design because most of us, their understanding is defective design is not covered. Yeah, which is true. Exclusion C, general exclusion C will say that anything to do with defective design will not be covered. So you must know what is defective design. Okay, so this is the example. A retaining wall with 500 mm thick wall stem. Wall stem means the vertical part, the standing part, right? Is required to retain the amount of soil on site. However, the design drawing given to the contractor only indicate 300 mm. So contractor being contractor, they just construct according to the paper, according to the design drawing, right? So they contract 300 mm. And then after completion, they backfill, and then the wall collapsed. So when we go to investigate, we found, hey, the drawing is wrong. It's only 300. Okay, so the error in drawing is actually the designer's responsibility. Okay, so we can consider this as a defective design because the design provider is only 300, but in fact, you might need 500. Okay, so contractor just do the job only. So we cannot blame the contractor. This is a design issue. Example 2, when you have a slope strengthening works designed by the consultant, right? So the contractor, again, they constructed based on the design drawing provided. Then the slope failed when it was almost complete, right? And it was found that the soil condition estimated by the design consultant was too optimistic. Let's say the design consultant assumed the soil is very hard, but in fact, the soil on site is very soft, okay? Then it is not a contractor problem, it's a design issue. Okay, clear? So I show you some example, the difference between defective design or defective workmanship. Now, this part is a bit confusing, so I hope you guys can follow. If you have a scaffolding which collapsed during concrete pouring, so would it be defective design or defective workmanship? It can be both. We have to be more specific in our question. Okay, now, is it because the contractor's worker did not install properly? This is very clear, right? If they did not install properly, then it's workmanship, right? Now, if it's contractor purposely left out the bracing to save money, they say, oh, this component, I don't need to put, looks okay, right? Then we can save a lot of money. This is design. Why is this design? Because it's their intention to take out this component, right? It's not that they accidentally do something wrong. They did not install properly without their knowledge, right? This is, they have intended, they have made a decision to take this out. So it's their intention to have this type of design, a very inadequate design, and they intended so. So that's why it's considered as a design. Now, when you have a retaining wall collapse, again, you can be either design or workmanship. So you have to go further and ask more sharper questions, right? Is it because there's no whip hole in the wall? If no whip hole means the design. Unless they come and tell you, oh, my worker didn't read the drawing properly, then it's workmanship. Okay? Yeah. If the contractor, if it's in the drawing but the contractor forgot to install, then it's workmanship. Okay? I hope you guys see the difference. If you guys don't see, never mind. Always work with the adjuster. If the contractor intend to exclude the whip hole, again, if it's intended, it's always design. Okay? Now, so in short, a defective design, it can be said to be an intention, a plan, a method devised by any party, not only the consultant. A lot of adjusters in this market, they will take the view that design should only be consultant's design. If anything wrong done by the contractor, it's workmanship. This view can only hold if you are working in Malaysia market. If you have a risk big enough and requires regional reinsurers, or not regional, maybe reinsurance in Singapore, whatever, to come in, they will not have this view, right? They will not say anything, any fault by the contractor is workmanship. It's not like that, you know. A design could be by any party, because the contractor, the subcontractor also can have their own design, temporary work design, you know. So it's still a design, all right? So whatever practice in the local market, some of you might be in the industry for 40 years, 30 years, 40 years, and you might have previous claim experience where it's different from what I say. I can only tell you that whatever is practiced in the local market might not be acceptable in the regional market. This is what I can tell you. So to be safe, just absorb what I tell you today, what I share with you. Okay? Now, defective workmanship is mostly error or mistake in the construction by a contractor. Okay? It's an error or mistake, okay? Not something intentional. Intentional means they intend to do it. They plan to do so. So when you say plan or intended, it is a design. Okay? Now, for discussion, so if you have a mobile crane lifting a bundle of steel bars on site, right? So this requires communication between the crane operator, the ground crew, and some workers on top of under construction buildings, just to coordinate, you know, all this movement. So the SOP requires all three parties to confirm. The ground crew has to say, okay, clear. Then the workers on top have to say clear. Then only the operator say, okay, now I move. All right? So this is the standard SOP. Now, in this case, the crane operator received instruction from the ground crew. The ground crew say, okay, you can sway the boom. But the worker on top, either something wrong with the walkie-talkie, or he noticed something wrong. Before he can say anything, the crane operator moved the boom. And then the boom hit the edge of the building and dropping the rebars on and damaging the construction works at the bottom. Okay, is this defective workmanship? A lot of adjuster will say it is, right? But to me, it's not. This is not even a workmanship issue. There's no workmanship here. It's just a simple human error. Okay? So is incorrect supervision defective workmanship or human error? This always we always argue on this as well. This one, I think until now, there's no clear answer to this. So in certain cases, usually sad to say, not sad to say, you guys are all in one company, so it's okay. It's okay to say, right? Usually insurers will look at all the conditions, will look at all the circumstances, and then decide which view they want to take. Okay, whether they want to consider this as workmanship or human error. Because usually workmanship, when it comes to defective workmanship, defective design, the deductible is higher. Okay, so there's no clear-cut answer to this, but this is my own understanding from working with regional guys, right? Workmanship must be something to do with contractors' workmanship, their skill, the quality of work. Okay, so from the example earlier, somebody didn't receive the clearance, and then they start to do certain work. That is not something to do with their skill, you know. It's not something to do with workmanship. It's just pure accident, pure error. So to me, they shouldn't be hit by the higher deductible. Okay, but again, yeah, it's up to the insurers. So as an agent, maintain good relationship with your claims department and also your underwriters, right? So it can help you. Okay, now, next we move on to the sum insured of the policy. Okay, the sum insured, it will include for the contract works, and also you may be able to include removal of debris. Usually it's on first loss basis, it's on the amount, right? Or even existing property can be covered. Okay. And then the extension of the coverage. Okay, so what can you extend to cover? You can cover maintenance period, expediting expenses. You can cover even the architects and surveyors fee, right? Faulty design can also be extended to be covered. But in normal policy in this market, I would say for faulty design cover, it's usually only the resultant damage, all right? But under some bigger projects, they will have different wordings for design, okay? And contractors' plant and equipment, so even that can be extended to be covered. So obviously you have to pay more premium, right? And existing property, it can be covered under Section 1 as well, right? So it's bad advice to tell your insurer existing property is covered under Section 2. It's not. It can be covered under Section 1, okay? Now, so what is actually contract works? The permanent works and temporary works. It's actually works to be executed, all sorts of works, okay? So it can be the construction and erection works, including the temporary works. It can also, like I said, be the testing and commissioning of your machineries. Let's say you have a chiller for your high rise, all these require testing and commissioning. And it can also be the maintenance part, all right? Because during maintenance period, after the work handover, the contractors still need to go back to rectify the defects, okay? So when they go back to rectify the defects, they have a risk, they carry a risk also. They carry a risk of damaging the completed works. So this can be covered, okay? Now this is usually a very confusing part, but it's good for you to make it clear. So the CAR policy, the duration is the contract work period plus a testing period, okay? So it starts from the commencement of work and it ends when the certificate of completion is issued, okay? That means when the certificate of completion is issued means the contractor's work is finished, right? They can leave the site, okay? So contractor's all risk policy will technically finish when the contractor moves out from the site. That means the contractor, once they are out of site, they don't have any risk on site anymore. So that is the intention of the CAR policy, okay? But you will notice that your CAR policy also covers the maintenance cover, also have a maintenance cover. Now, usually the maintenance cover is already when let's say they are constructing a building. Once they hand over, the building will start operation. People will start occupying, the owner will start occupying the building or their tenant. So usually this structure, completed structure, these owners or these unit owners, they will have their own policy, let's say fire policy, IAR policy, to cover the operational risk, right? Because there's no more construction risk, okay? So that's why under this period, we only have the maintenance cover, right? The maintenance cover is actually very, very limited. This is what I want you guys to be clear. The maintenance period, even though that period is listed in the policy schedule, it doesn't mean the coverage, the full coverage is given for that period. It is very limited, okay? I'll show you this, the maintenance period. Because maintenance period is when the contractor has completed their work and moved out from the site. So the coverage is only limited to visit maintenance, damage occasioned in course of operation at site during maintenance period for the purpose of making good defects. So they are called in by the owner to say, hey, this piping was not done properly or the plaster was not plastered properly, you come back and touch up, okay? So when they come back, there's a risk to damage other stuff. So this is called visit maintenance. Now, nowadays, I suppose all CAR policy will be given for free the extended maintenance cover. So extended maintenance cover, it covers only two things. It covers the first one, visit maintenance. The contractor's risk when they go back to touch up, to make good the defects. Another portion is it covers damage arising from cost occurring during the construction period. That means there is already some damage which was caused during the construction period, but nobody noticed it. And when they hand over, everything was okay. So after handover, during this 12 months, 24 months, or 18 months maintenance period, only that thing failed. That structure failed. That pipe burst. And you can trace back to the construction period, then it's covered. So the extended maintenance cover actually only covers two things, these two things, all right? The one on the left, maintenance guarantee, I've not seen it in this market. I suppose you have to pay a lot of premium to get that, right? So I don't see it, okay? Maintenance guarantee actually covers even the cost during manufacturing stage. So we don't see it here. So the most common one is extended maintenance. So be very clear, extended maintenance cover only cover two things and not the full coverage as per your standard construction period. Okay? Now, just to show you some example of loss during maintenance period. So let's say we have a water distribution pipe which dislodged during the maintenance period and damaged the completed works. Let's say it's a shop. Let's say it's a restaurant. Okay, so after completion, the people move in, the restaurant start operation. Then suddenly your water distribution pipe dislodged and water came out and damaged all the kitchen cabinet, the kitchen features, which were constructed during the under the project, right? So when adjuster go in, they found that the band was not tightened properly during the construction stage, and then thus causing the leakage or the burst. Okay, so this causation can be traced back to a fault during the construction stage. In this instance, this will be considered under the extended maintenance cover. Okay, next, we have a wall collapse during the maintenance period, and it was found that it was due to contractor's poor workmanship, right, on drainage blanket. If you don't know, drainage blanket is a component of a retaining wall, okay? So it's due to a bad workmanship to that, right? So when you backfill and you hand over, this is usually within like 1 month, 2 months, everything was okay, right? After you hand over, during the monsoon season, water come in and then the under the water pressure build up, then only the wall failed, right? And upon investigation, you found it's workmanship issue. Now, this will be covered under the maintenance period, extended maintenance period cover. Okay? So if you don't understand, again, don't worry, your adjuster will understand. So be sure you work with your client to provide all information, and then you can have a very fruitful and very transparent discussion with the adjusters. Now we move to the more common clauses we see. The designer risk clause, right? I suppose most of the policy will have this nowadays, right? So it is to revise the wording of exclusion C. Exclusion C is very, very wide. It will exclude everything related to defective design, right? There's no consideration at all for anything. As long as it's defective design, the whole claim is thrown out. So with a designer risk clause, sometimes you call it a buyback clause, you change the wording. Okay, how you change the wording? You actually replace exclusion C with this wording. The cost of replacement, repair, or rectification of loss of or damage to items due to defective material and or workmanship and or faulty design. Okay, so it covers a lot of things. But this exclusion shall be limited. It's still an exclusion. So the exclusion is limited to the items immediately affected. Okay, that means immediately affected by the faulty design, workmanship, or material. Okay, and shall not be deemed to exclude loss of or damage to correctly executed items resulting from an accident due to such defective material and or workmanship and or faulty design. So in short, the wording says the exclusion is only to those defectively designed components of the structure, of the collapsed structure, okay, of the failed structure. And any resultant damage, if the resultant damage is properly executed, right, correctly executed, then it will be covered. Okay, so I show you some example. For a housing development, right? So usually you have a boundary, and at the boundary you have retaining wall. So your residential building will be on top of the wall. Now, if the wall failed, the wall was defectively designed and it failed, it caused the soil to move and your completed row of houses to move and be damaged. So will this be payable? Yeah, will this be payable? So this is very clear lah. The wall moved, the wall defectively designed, so we exclude the wall, but we pay for the completed houses because the completed houses has nothing to do with the defective wall. It's just a poor victim, a resultant damage. So it's very clear cut, is covered. Okay. However, when you have a situation, especially on a highway, right, where you have all this soil foundation, the piles, right? You found that the piles were defectively designed and caused the embankment on top. Let's say they construct a highway. So the pile failed and the highway on top suffered subsidence, crack, subsidence, or even collapse, right? So the highway on top is actually a resultant damage. Okay? And the piles below are defectively designed piles. If we follow the theory in this example, the resultant damage should be payable. Okay, so the embankment should be payable, right? This is the easiest way out. Some insurers also like to use this, to use this method to say we exclude the piles and we only pay the embankment. Okay, now this works only until some smart ass reinsurers ask some question, right? So they might come back and ask you, hey, how are you going to repair the embankment, right? If you say it's a resultant damage, how are you going to repair it? So obviously to repair the embankment or the highway on top, you have to remove what has collapsed, right? You have to remove it and you have to fix the defective pile first, right? The pile is wrongly too small or wrongly designed. So we put in new one or we strengthen the piles. Then only we put back up the highway. When you come to think of that, then the embankment, the highway, whether it's damaged or not, if you know the piles are defective and it requires repair, you would have to remove the highway anyway, right? So in that case, to remove the embankment and put it back, it becomes part of the cost to repair the defective piles. Make sense? If you look at it that way, then the cost of the embankment shouldn't be paid, right? Because the cost of removing and reconstructing the embankment is part of the cost to rectify the defective piles. Okay? So usually, I mean, you guys won't see this kind of situation because usually only when the claim is big enough, then reinsurers or underwriters will start to look at it differently. Or else, usually they'll take the easy way out and say, we straight away take out the defective part, we pay the resultant damage. And sure enough, this is actually the more common practice at the moment because to reject a claim or to create more issue, you have more work to do. You have to explain to the insured, you have to make sure the insured accept this, So it's a harder path to go, but it's actually the correct path to go, right? So if the claim is not too significant, usually insurer also close one eye and say resultant damage, we just pay. Okay? Now, this is only my view. It doesn't represent any insurer's view. So if things happen like this, be sure to sit down with the claims department, underwriters, adjusters, and work out something which is amicable. Okay? Now, this special condition concerning theft prevention, this is very, very crucial at the moment because nowadays, most insurance company will impose this, right? Because the theft cases are too rampant, and usually we have this theft prevention. Either it's a special condition or sometimes it's a warranty. Warranty is die you must follow. You breach one, they can throw out the claim. Okay, special condition is also very strict, but still have chance to talk. Okay, now usually under this list, you will have the project site must be under surveillance, or you have security guards for 24 hours. Okay, then it will require you to have patrolling of the site. Usually the wordings won't specify the interval of the patrol, but some do. So if they have, you must advise your client to follow strictly. They must have those logbook for the security guards, to tick when they have carried out the patrol. Some even have those scanner, the touch one, the touch point, right? Those are good. Those will show that you have complied. Okay, and when we say security guards, when the policy specifically says security guards, it means that it must be licensed security guard. It cannot be your own worker. It cannot be those gangster you employ. Cannot. So it must be licensed security guard. Okay, and if the wording require the guards to check the workers and vehicles going in and out of the site, then they must have a proper evidence, proper logbook or whatever to show that this have been done. Else, how are you going to show underwriters that all these were carried out? Okay, so everything must be black and white. If you see this being imposed to your policy, make sure you run through all this with your client to show that they have done all this before they start work. Okay, in case anything happen, we also don't want to argue on this. Okay, the second requirement is usually on spotlight. So this is easier lah. So when you have a storage yard or even not, you should have spotlight at maybe the perimeters. Okay, especially when the site is at those undeveloped areas, rural areas, or next to those plantations. These are the critical ones. You must ask them to put up spotlights. Okay, whether it works or not, whether it deter any theft incident or not, we don't care, because the policy asks you to do it. Just do it. Okay, else you give chance to underwriters to throw out your claim. Okay, now entire construction site is enclosed in sturdy fencing with access control. Okay, this sturdy fencing means the fence, the hoarding cannot be those used for 5 times already, very flimsy. The metal sheet also detached from the boat already. Sturdy fencing means everything must be proper. Not to say new lah, but at least it's sturdy. It's not flimsy. It still looks stable. It's still tall enough, right? You must have that. Well, the contractor might argue, hey, based on my construction stage, now I need to take out all this, right? So it's almost completion, almost handover. So I have to take out the fencing, right? So when you take out the fencing, I would have breached this. So obviously, adjuster have to advise the underwriters to say, to explain to them this loss happened during which stage of the construction. If it's almost complete, then it's understandable to all parties that you have to remove the fencing. Okay? Now, so an underwriter will accept that. But they will also request that, hey, once this fencing are removed, then you better hand over it quickly. If you don't, if there's any further delay, then you would have to increase the security guards. It's a common sense thing, right? So it's good that you explain to the contractor. Okay? Now, some of these special conditions also require you to have only 1 or 2 entrance gate. Okay? Because some sites are very big, they can have 3, 4, but usually they close all, especially at night, and only left the main one. So which is a good practice, that one. Okay? Now, then in I think recent years, the 5th condition has been put inside. So the materials should be delivered on a need basis and installed as soon as possible. So that means the contractor cannot one shot at the beginning of the project, put all the materials there, and then use it for 1 year. So this is not good practice because it will attract a lot of all these theft incident, right? Either from outsiders or even their own workers. Okay, especially on the high theft items such as cables, copper, steel. All these are high value items. So some we even see the window frames, aluminium window frames. All these are stolen, right? So all these materials should be kept in stores with secured padlocks, right? So worst comes to worst, it must be locked, right? Even though we know as a contractor, as engineer, we know those small padlocks is actually useless. With a knock, you can open it. But since the policy requires you to do so, just do it. Whether how effective it is, doesn't matter because it's a special condition or it's a warranty. Just comply. Understand? Just comply. Don't give chance to any party to throw out your claim because of all these small things. Okay? It's very easy to comply only. Right? Now, the sixth one is sorry for my language, is a very stupid one. Adequate no trespassing sign posted along the perimeter. So this Masale likes to put in all this wording because in their country, most people are very honest. They can read the sign and say, oh, no trespassing, I shouldn't go in. But in actual fact, especially in Malaysia, all the workers, they are foreigners. I wonder how many of them can read this no trespassing word. So, but it's a requirement under the policy, and especially if it's a special condition or warranty, just comply with it, right? Okay. Now, then there are this general condition. Sometimes underwriters will also use this to pick on your claims, right? So general condition 3, it says that the insured shall at his own expense take all reasonable precaution and comply with all reasonable recommendations of the insurers to prevent loss, damage, or liability, and comply with statutory requirements and manufacturers' recommendations. Okay? So it basically says that a competent contractor will have taken all these precautions to protect their work, to protect their site, right? So to have proper theft prevention, to have proper design, even though it's temporary works, to have proper housekeeping. Okay. Now, this is the theft part is what your claims department would like me to highlight to you guys. So with or without the special condition of theft prevention, with or without the warranty of that, for theft prevention under this clause, this condition, general condition, this is in all policy you cannot run. Okay, make sure you sit down with your contractor and tell them to ensure the site is fully hoarded. Okay, fully hoarded up. Don't have openings. Okay, if you have openings, cover it before the adjuster go in. Okay, you didn't hear it from me. Okay, then the hoardings are sturdy and without openings or cuts. The guarded site entrances. So all these site entrances must have a guard. Okay, especially at night. Okay, during daytime, usually you have one, at night, probably you have two, things like that. Okay, regular site patrols you must have. It must be licensed security guards and it must be sufficient. You cannot have a site of maybe 10 football fields and you only have one guard. So that is not reasonable. Okay, it's to save cost, but it's not reasonable. Unless you say, oh, my hoardings, my chain link fence are 3 meters high with barbed wire. Nobody can climb in. Then if you only have one guard, then we buy that, right? Or else, please, at least 4 guards, things like that. And on 24 hours shift. It's also good to have watchdogs if you have a big site, right? Spotlights. And if you breach any of this, if you don't have any of this, the insurers reserve their rights, right? To either, I won't say they will throw out the claim, but it gives them more opportunity to cut your claim because you have not complied with certain things. So when that happens, the tide turns totally, it becomes that, hey, as an insurer, I actually don't need to pay your claim. But because you are a good agent and good client, I will pay certain amount and you should be happy with that. You don't like that, right? So don't let it happen, right? Make sure you guys are in control. And then when you submit a claim, the claims team will be satisfied and then they'll say, okay, all these are properly done. It's all reasonable. Then we follow the recommendation and then we pay out. All right, this is what you want. Okay. Now, let's see what it is. This is the late notification clause, right? So like I mentioned earlier, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days. Communication channel is so convenient these days. Please ask the contractor to inform you guys immediately if anything happen. Okay, by any means, right? Just inform. It can be a phone call also can, but one thing bad about phone call is you don't really have a record, the evidence. So if it's a WhatsApp, if it's a message, if it's an email, it's good enough because if anything happens, you can still show the insurance, hey, I have done this, I've informed you. Whether you take action or not is another problem. Now, the bad thing is if the insured WhatsApp you, email you earlier and you miss it out, then that creates a problem. Okay? Then it's not the insurer's fault, it's your fault, right? So you have to be careful with that, right? So, but it's a good practice to tell the insured to inform you by all means if anything happens, big or small, Then as an agent, you can advise them whether it's covered or not, whether they should lodge this or not, or if it's straight out not an insurance claim, then no point put in. Okay, but if you are not sure, please go to your claims team. I bet there are a lot of people there who can help you. Okay. Now, we're almost done already. Not to say almost done. The last section. Okay, third-party liability. Now, third-party liability, the coverage is legal liability to pay as damages consequent upon accidentally bodily injury to or illness of third party, fatal or not. But the more common coverage is the accidental loss of or damage to property belonging to third parties. So third party property damage, in short. Okay, now, so what are the special exclusion? The special exclusion, it includes cost to make good anything covered or coverable under Section 1, right? So anything covered or can be covered under Section 1 will not be considered under Section 2. So principal existing property for 1, right? It can be covered under Section 1. So it won't be considered under Section 2. Okay? So property belonging to or held in care, custody or control of the contractor, principal or other firm connected with the project, right? So PEP. Okay? Any agreement by the insured to pay any sum unless such liability would have attached also in the absence of such agreement. So these are contractual obligation. It's not covered under the third-party section, third-party liability section, right? Now, damage to property caused by vibration or by removal or weakening support. It is standard wording, it is not covered. But usually in the policy nowadays, you have a special condition, you have a special clause to cover this. Okay, accident caused by vehicle license for general road use. This is not covered because if it's a vehicle license for road use, they would have a motor insurance to cover all this comprehensive liability. Okay, so under the CAR, it won't pick up. Now, bodily injury to employees or workmen of the contractors or principal, this is not covered as well. You have a more specific SOCSO or workman comp, those policy to cover this. Okay. Now, very quickly, we go into the special condition concerning underground cables, pipes, or other facilities. So whenever you have an underground cable claim, underground pipe claim, this is the wording you need to look at, right? So the wording very specifically say that if they will cover this loss, but only if prior to the commencement of work, before everything work start, the insured has inquired with the relevant authorities about the exact position of such cables, pipes, or other underground facilities, and takes all necessary steps to avoid damage to same. Okay? Now, you need to look back at your policy whether the word is inquired or inquired. So there's a difference. Most people think inquire with an E and inquire with an I is just old English and modern English. It's actually not. There's a difference. Okay? So later I'll go into that. So this wording basically requires the insured to have inquired, to show evidence that they have inquired with the authorities. So authorities meaning the owner of the underground facilities. It can be TMB, Telecom, Time, the owner of the facility. So a lot of times the contractor will only show us, when they show evidence, they show the approval from MPPJ, the approval from JKR to start work. Those are not relevant authorities who can give you information of the damaged cables, right? To get information about the damaged cables or pipes, you must go to the owner. So in this case, the relevant authorities means the owner of those affected cables, pipes, or underground facilities. Okay, clear? And take all necessary steps. That means you would have carried out piloting, you would have done the utilities mapping, okay? All these necessary steps. And the keyword also is here, and. So you must inquire and take your own necessary step. It's not I inquire or I take step. It's not one or the other. It's both. You must inquire and also take steps. Okay? This is what is required under the policy. Now, if everything is complied with, then we look at the indemnity. The indemnity shall in any case be restricted to the repair cost of such cables. That means the material repair cost only, right? Any consequential damage or penalties will be excluded from the cover. So if you damage TMB cable, they say the material damage repair, the cable repair is 300,000. Then they have a 10 million penalty for causing all this power outage. The penalty, the 10 million won't be covered. Okay, it will cover strictly on the material repair cost. All right. So types of underground pipes and facilities, I think I've mentioned just now. You can have gas pipe, telecom cables, either it's copper cables, either it's fiber optic. Then fiber optic could be Time.com, could be Maxis, could be DG, now no more, right? Yeah, Cellcom, Unify. So all these can be seen underground. Okay. Then in certain places you have gas pipe. Then you have sewage pipe. You have Shabas pipe, right? All these different utilities. Okay. And number 7 is usually what we encounter, because usually the main trunking, main pipe, main cables, it can be detected. It's the small ones when it tee off to the site, to the end user. Those are the small ones which the mapping usually miss. And usually this is what the contractor will hit, right? It can be pipe culverts as well, right? Underground pipes. So for these underground cables, usually their owner, when they lay the cable, they'll have a protective cover, okay? So if you are excavating, open excavation from top of the surface of the road, when you hit, it will usually hit the protective cover first, technically speaking, right? But in actual fact, in a lot of areas, especially old cables, they don't have this. Because this protective cover, I think it's not something very, it is something quite new, I would say, for the last 15, 20 years. So any old utilities before that, they wouldn't have this. So if your contractor is doing work and they start excavation without taking any precaution, they will hit the cables directly because those cables are not protected. Okay. So when you have this type of claim, other than open excavation where you have an excavator or backhoe excavating from the road surface, a lot of times we also hear the contractor say HDD, horizontal directional drilling, right? It's damaged by the HDD. So what the hell is a HDD? HDD is this machine, okay? It's basically a machine which punch through a small reamer drill head through the ground, right? So from top to bottom. So it will punch through the ground, follow the design alignment, go to the other end, and then change to a bigger reamer head, the drilling head, and come back again, and then change to another bigger one. So it goes left, right, left, right, left, right, until they get the hole big enough for the cable. Okay, so this thing is conducted everything underground. Only the machine is on top of the road. Okay, so everything is underground. You can't see anything. Hold on. Now, so another view of the HDD method statement. Okay, then other than HDD, you also have pipe jacking. This is for bigger pipe. It's also underground. You would have excavate entry pit, and then you push. You have a hydraulic jack to push the pipe section through the tunnel. Okay, all this can cause underground cable damage. How? Because most of the work these days, you would already have utilities mapping. It will show you, the mapping will show you. Let's see. This is the sample of the mapping. No sound. Can you hear me? Somebody say no sound, I see.
Yeah, we can hear you. I didn't believe that those agents say that they have no sounds, right? You can just exit and rejoin.
Yeah, okay. So this is a sample of utilities mapping drawing. So when they detect, they will draw out what they detected. Okay. So it will tell you what sort of cable and then at what depth. Usually this is average lah. Right? Now the problem is the utilities detector usually they will tell you, they will show on plan, okay, there's this row of cable here, but it won't tell you how many cables are there actually, right? So if the contractor didn't check properly themselves, they would have assumed, oh, maybe one cable there, one row of cable. So they said, oh, on the drawing shows 2.5 meter. So if I go 3 meter, it would have cleared all this. Then they designed their HDD alignment, the profile, to be 2.5 meter deep. When they start drilling, it still hit the cable. Then only when they excavate, they realize, oh, there are 3 layers, 4 layers of cable from the 2.5 down. So from the 2.5, the top layer, it can go down to 4 meters, the thickness, because they have so many rows there. So even with a 3 meter profile, you will still hit the cable, just like this diagram show you. So most of the time, this is what happened. Because the contractor only rely on the mapping drawing, which shows the top layer only of what they detected. Okay, so this is a danger here. So how do they detect? This is the thing. Now, in actual fact, there are a lot of ways to detect underground cables. You can have radio waves. You can use a metal detector. Okay. You can have ultrasound. This is commonly used in Europe, right? It's all these technology are there and it's not expensive. It's just that for convenience sake, especially in Malaysia, they only use those handheld radio mapping, right? Which is cheap, and also it's easy to use because the foreign workers will be able to use, right? But it's not accurate. So this is one thing, sadly speaking, it's happening in Malaysia, right? Most of the contractor, even though they say they have done the mapping, it's not done properly. So it's like rubbish in, rubbish out, right? Whatever they do, they give you, it's not reflective of what is actually on site. Okay, so in actual fact, for ultrasound, you can detect even the layer, how many layers, how deep, right? A lot of contractor in Malaysia will tell you, hey, this detector only detect metal. The fiber optic I cannot see. If you have the proper equipment, you can actually see. If you know how to read the data, you can actually know there are some obstruction there. So it could be cable, it could be fiber optic cable. But most of the utility mappings company or the so-called specialists, they left the work to be done by their worker, usually foreign worker. So to them, if it's not glaring metal object, they will say there's nothing. Yeah, it could just be the soil, right? So they don't pick up anything, and they produce a rubbish mapping drawing, right? So sad to say. So this is something we can educate the contractor to have more precautionary measures, and don't rely blindly on the mapping drawing. Okay. Now, currently, I think our government has taken some initiative to stop all this, to not to say stop, to reduce the occurrence of all these claims, right? So previously, they have a platform called Call Before You Dig. So many of the authorities are using it. You have FiberRail, Time, Maxis, Telecom, Celcom, well, basically all the communication company are using it. All right. So you call before you do it. But this, I believe, is only in Selangor area. Okay. Now, then, in recent, this 1-2 years, I think starting last year or the year before, the state government has taken some initiative, right? So it's called Corridor Utility Malaysia, right? So this is an initiative by the state government. So they gather all this underground information, and for a contractor, you can actually go to them and check whether at the area you want to work, there are any utilities or not. Okay? But again, unfortunately, this corridor utility, as of last year, I believe only 4 states in Malaysia are using it. Selangor, Penang, I think Johor, and either Pahang or Terengganu. So not all states are using it. But for those with major development, like the few big cities I mentioned, they have this. So it's good that you tell your contractor about this, so that if they have work there, check with this corridor utility. Okay? You can Google and then can get more information from the web. Now, so now I delve into why those wordings are important. Okay, so for special condition concerning underground cables, pipe, and facilities, the original wording is actually inquired with the relevant authorities. Now, what is the difference between enquire and inquire? Right. For the longest time, I also thought it's just English.
You know, and
Miss Quake, you're not muted. Okay. So I always thought it's just old English and new English. Inquire. Then only when I consult a lawyer friend, then he showed me there's a difference. So enquire is like our daily inquiry lah. Can be verbal, can be formal, can be written. But inquire is a formal form of inquiry. So that's why the original wording from London on this clause is inquired. So it says it must be a formal inquiry. So how to show formal inquiry? So obviously, the contractor must be able to show letters to these authorities, that they are inquiring about the location, right? Or informing them of their work and asking them and showing their plan to this authority to say whether you can comment on it. So it's a formal inquiry, okay? So the contractor must be able to show that. So the easiest way to comply with this is to ask the contractor to write a letter to these authorities, to all authorities, because they wouldn't know what is there, what is not there, right? So the easiest way is to write to all authorities and ask them whether they have any cables there. All right. So whether those authorities, you most likely think that, hey, Malaysia, those authorities won't respond, right? Which is true, but the wording doesn't require them to respond. The wording only says, as a contractor, you must do your duty and inquire with these authorities. Whether they come back to you or not, I didn't say I need to know, right? So it's not a requirement. The requirement is for you to inquire with them. Okay, so the contractor must be able to show proof that they have written to these authorities about the exact position of such cables, pipes, or underground facilities. Okay, now the word "and," like I said, it must be inquire, and also the contractor themselves must take the necessary steps, like do piloting or check the manhole or check any markings on the road. Okay, so it must be done together. So if you only have utilities mapping, is it sufficient? To me, it's not sufficient, right? So the contractor must show that they have also taken other necessary steps to prevent damage. Okay, so this is the key ingredient in this wording you must know. Another interesting wording is the vibration removal or weakening of support clause. We call VRWS. This concerns where you have third-party building crack, third-party property damage. Usually it's next to your insured site. Okay? Now, this wording is quite long. They have two parts. So the first part talks about the conditions it requires. And then the lower part talks about the exclusions of this special condition. Okay? So the conditions is like the requirement. It says that the policy only pays if such loss or damage results in total or partial collapse. So the third-party property, Miss Low, there's no break time. I'll finish very soon. I also want to get out soon. So yeah, let me finish. Okay. So total or partial collapse, it must have these two. Okay. So if it's just superficial, it's not covered. Right. Another condition is prior to the commencement of construction, its condition is sound and necessary loss prevention measure have been taken. Okay. And shall before commencement of construction and at his own expense prepare a report on the condition of endangered property, any endangered property or land or building. Now, this is where nowadays you hear a lot of DLAP report. So before construction start, the contractor will engage an independent party to do a DLAP report. DLAP report is basically a survey to capture the condition of the existing structure, existing third-party building, the existing condition. So basically it's taking photographs to show whether currently there's crack or not. If there's already crack, so where are the cracks? Okay. Now these are the conditions. The exclusion says that loss or damage which is foreseeable, having regard to the nature of the construction work or the manner of its execution. So it's like what I mentioned earlier. If you know you excavate this slope, it will cause damage to the next door building, and you still don't put in a row of sheet piles or you still don't do any strengthening or precautionary measure, then it is obvious things will happen if you just excavate blindly, openly, right? So anything foreseeable is not covered. Second exclusion, superficial damage. So like I said, the condition requires the damage to be total or partial collapse. If it's only superficial damage, that means hairline crack, right? Only the concrete peel off a bit, which neither impairs the stability of the property, land or building, nor endangers their users, this will be excluded. Okay? This is contractor's own risk, right? The policy won't pay for it. And the last exclusion is cause of loss prevention or minimization measures which become necessary during the period of insurance. This clause is very important because once you have a knowledge of everything on top, some people will say, hey, now my wall tilted because of my work, but it's not a total collapse and it's not partially collapsed. It's just tilted. So why don't I wait? I don't do anything and wait for it to collapse. Then I claim. The last exclusion will prevent them from doing that because it says any loss prevention or minimization measures which become necessary. So once you know there's a problem with the work or third-party structure, you must take precaution. You must prevent it from deteriorating. And this cost is your own cost. Okay? So this is VRWS clause. So some discussion. If the cracks develop everywhere in the building, the cracks is see-through cracks, is wide enough, you can see through the wall. Okay? But there's no total or partial collapse of the wall. Do you pay for it? The answer is no lah. Okay? But current market practice is a bit lenient. It says even though there's no total partial collapse, all right, but the cracks could be structural, it could be wide enough. And if you have an independent consultant to certify that this building is not safe for occupancy, then most of the underwriters in this market will consider paying this claim. Okay? So make sure you work with an adjuster, they will know what to do. Okay, now, thank you. I finished my presentation. So whoever wants to go to toilet, please go. Let's see whether there's any questions in the chat room I can address. Right. Okay, the first question I say, during maintenance period, if Kecurian, it can be covered. Answer is no. So, like I said, maintenance period, the coverage is very limited with the extended maintenance cover. So the word already tell you is extended maintenance cover, right? It's either you go in to do maintenance work and cause damage, or if something failed during the maintenance period, but it was caused during the construction period. So Kecurian, theft is not an insured peril under the maintenance period. Okay? Water seepage also covered during maintenance period. Water seepage itself, water seepage, I would say, is a damage, water damage. But what caused the water seepage? This is what we need to know, right? If it's from a pipe which is not properly tightened, right, then it potentially could be covered, right? If you purely say water seepage, I don't know whether water come from roof or whatever. So if you can be more specific, maybe I can answer that. Okay, during maintenance period, this one from Chiu Woon Eng. During maintenance period and completion letter was issued, the workers actually damaged the aircon and causes power failure, leading to damage. Same restaurant, food and fridge damage. Said in annual policy and project policy. What is annual policy? You mean the liability policy? So project policy, the workers accidentally damaged. So why are the workers still there on site at the first place? If they are there to do maintenance work, yes, then potentially it can cover the damage. But if you talk about food in the fridge, that is already third-party property, right? Because the food and fridge belongs to the restaurant operator already. So unless your policy is extended with liability during maintenance period, then it's not covered, right? Because the extended maintenance cover is for material damage. Okay, section 1. Right? Now, if a contractor is in cable laying during maintenance period, claim arise. Can they claim? What sort of claim? This one I also don't know. If cable laying and then during maintenance period, the cable failed, and when we do investigation, it can be traced back to your workmanship or some other things covered under the policy, then yes, they can lodge a claim. Then from Verda, for underground cable, personal experience, got claimed because when excavate contractor hit TMB cable, major cable, TMB billed 80,000 for repair. Insurer declined because backhoe, yes. Backhoe is licensed for road use. Exclusion that no one noticed until claim arise, yes. Can I know why this clause exists and how to help client? Okay, like I said earlier, a backhoe, it's an excavator on rubber tire. So if it's on rubber tire, it's meant for general road. It's meant for road use. It can go on road. So any vehicle that can go on public road will be required to have a motor policy. So technically speaking, they will have to claim this under their motor policy.
Okay. Now, how do you get around this one? You can always have a clause which is called vehicle license for road use, but used as a tool of trade, right? That means they acknowledge you use this type of vehicle for work, this type of motor license vehicle for your work, but it is used on site, right? Then with this clause, it will be covered, right? So check with your underwriters. Can agent request copy of the slides? I think your site already have. Then water seepage from wall outside during raining. Then what caused the water seepage? Was it because their plaster wasn't done properly or their roof wasn't done properly and damage to, let's say, damage to completed works? If they have the extended maintenance cover, yes, potentially, I think you can put in a claim. But we still need to investigate. Okay, so potentially you can put in a claim. During the maintenance period, lightning strike, tak boleh. It's nothing to do with the maintenance and nothing to do with construction fault. This one they have to claim during the maintenance period means building already handed over. So the building's own fire policy will pick up. So not your CAR policy. Okay. Mandarin session. This one have to check with GE. I can speak Mandarin. So if need to, then ask GE to arrange. Okay. I think I've addressed all the questions. Alex, so I pass back to you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Vince, for a very insightful and wonderful sessions. Yeah, I think Vince, you may leave the meeting room, and for the rest of agents, you have to stay tuned as usual. Yeah, so I will launch the polling sessions right now. Give me a second. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So if you need my contact or everything,